And good morning.
Or afternoon, depending on where
Afternoon.
you are.
True. Yes. I've lost track of time zones. I am Steve Endo
Yes.
and
And I am Tanya Henderson.
and welcome. We This is an episode of Two Blind Mice. It's been a while.
It has been a while. And I just got a notification that, hey, Tanya and Steve are
Really?
on my phone.
Oh, cool. I
I
didn't get
did.
one. Okay. Cool.
Yep.
So today
So,
we wanted to talk about the Business Central 2020 Wave 2, a few of the features that we think are interesting.
yes. And it's Casual Friday today, by the way, too. So that's why
Ah,
Steve and I are dressed like this.
yes, I normally wear a tuxedo and a top hat, but today I'm going casual with my fine Egyptian cotton polo. How's that?
There you go. Does it have the little elephant with the top hat?
It does have an elephant, but no top hat and skateboard because that was a special
Oh,
edition hand
dang it.
embroidered. My daughter actually
Oh,
took
okay.
that shirt from me, so
Shame on her. She can
well,
probably wear it, though.
she does wear it. Yes. So okay,
Too
so
funny. All
let
right.
me jump over to our slide here really quick, and if I can figure this out. Okay, so why don't you, Tanya, since you actually read the document, why don't you talk about a few of these features?
So there's a lot of features that are going to be coming out in the October Wave 2 release. Some of them have already been previewed, and I think we did them in a previous episode. But so I tried to pick some of them that were more September, October releases. I know the one that we spoke about before, I think was bank reconciliation. That's actually been moved to February.
Oh,
So
okay.
most of these are all either September or October is
Okay.
what we're talking about today.
Okay.
So,
So the first two that you have here, interestingly, let me switch back to the slides. Dynamics GP
mhm.
migration to BC, and you listed checkbooks and open purchase orders.
Yes. So previously you had just the open, I think open AR and open AP transactions were all you had. So now they've also added the checkbooks in for your master data. So now you should have inventory items, customers, vendors, and GL accounts, of course, and then checkbooks. And I think they've also, reading through the document, it looks like they've done a little bit of enhancements on the chart of accounts bringing in. And I'm gonna guess that it has something to do with segments. I believe I read this too previously, of segments becoming dimensions and dimension values. So
Cool.
you got to probably have all that those identified in GP in order for them to migrate in. But I think that's what's coming down
And
on the
so
migration side anyway.
other than like, if checkbooks is listed, that one
Hmm.
doesn't really excite me too much because okay, there's a handful of master records. Is there? And do you think there's any other reason why that's being brought over? Is it to potentially link bank transactions that are being brought over as well?
So you don't have obviously 50 checkbooks set up in your GP, Steve. And that's why it's not a
Correct.
big deal for you. So there are some people that honestly have 50 to 100 checkbooks I've
Got
seen
it.
in their GP.
Okay.
And also, your numbering and, just the last checkbook number, all of that stuff coming in. That I feel like is one of the things people, for some reason, always forget. They'll set up the checkbooks and they will, they forget to put in the last checkbook number. And then they go to print a check and it bombs.
Got it.
So I
Okay.
think that's one of the reasons they did that too.
Makes sense.
I'm sure
And
people have griped about that.
makes sense. I'm going to try to
Yeah.
do an on-the-fly change in vMix here because switching full screen between the slides, we don't see us. So
Hmm.
let me try to get fancy here. And while we are
Ooh.
on camera, let me That's kind of weird, but we're going to run with it. So I'm going to stick us in the bottom corner. It does a little bit of a strange
Wow.
thing here, but one moment, almost done.
Well, that's okay. It's Casual Friday, and my dog, who has learned to open the door, just opened the door. So I came in, so came in the studio, and you know, it's like I can't really get up and close it.
Funny. It's like I've seen people
So
train like their cat to ring a bell when they're hungry. That sounds really neat until the
yeah,
cat starts ringing the bell every 5 minutes and then they have to hide the bell. So,
yes,
okay. So let me try
yes.
this. Let me
And when your
switch
dog
to,
can open every door in your house.
yes, every door, cabinet. Yep. Okay. So it
Oh
looks
yeah,
like I did an on the fly switch so you can see us. It's not perfect. There's some black
I
background, but
can.
I think this works better so
It
they
looks
can
pretty
see
today.
us. Okay. So,
All right.
got it. So we covered checkbooks, open purchase orders. Open purchase
Mm-hmm.
orders, that's interesting. I'm assuming that wouldn't be great if you have partially received purchase orders or anything like that. That might be complicated.
I'm gonna bet I'm gonna bet the open purchase orders are gonna come over. I would assume they come over with what's been received, so that it'll have, like if you had 10 of them and you already received five, that number is probably gonna come over. I would assume. Keep in
Okay.
mind these are features that are not necessarily out there yet for us to test.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, cool. So next
Yeah.
slide. Let's see. Okay, so this one is very interesting. Tell me more.
Yeah. So this one I was a little surprised at because I had never necessarily heard of the data lake. The CDS I always thought was going to be where all of the data, and you and I spoke about it, and you said you thought that's where the data was going to be as well. Because I know probably at the last summit, talking with a couple of people, they said that you could put the GP data. I think it was called what's it? Customer, that's insights. I can't remember the name of that thing that's in GP. But it's
Okay.
on the homepage now, so you could upload the data if you remember seeing that. And that was taking a snippet of the data, and they always said you can't really do anything with it. All you could
Right.
do is look at the data and report off of it, right? So I was reading through the document and then saw this data lake. So the Azure data lake. So I started researching it, which I had not necessarily heard of it. And I saw a couple of videos that started in about 2018, July,
Hmm.
about it. And so there's a storage option on it, and then there's also an analytic part. And so I guess this was the best place to put the data.
Interesting.
So,
Yeah, I'm familiar with Data Lake. I'm familiar with CDS, and
mhm.
I saw that someone took custom data, or excuse me, I think they took their BC data, pulled it into CDS as a staging ground to pull it into Data Lake because they had a lot of data and they wanted to do certain types of analytics, and Data Lake was the destination where they wanted to be. But I don't recall that being the case for BC migrated data previously. So that is interesting. I'm assuming they have a good reason and there are some benefits to doing that. So interesting.
So one of the benefits that I think is probably going to be out there for it is the size of the data. Because, GP people, we've all
Right.
pretty much been in SQL forever. And so they said that it's really for large data, or can be for large amounts of data. And I didn't see anywhere where it was a charge for it, but,
I'm
I'm
guessing
sure
there's a
that'll
charge
come
somewhere.
out.
Yep. Well,
Yeah,
and
I would
that
think
is
so too.
interesting. Who knows? Maybe they wrapped it into the fee for the GP data migration process.
GP.
Edge, whatever that name is that I've forgotten by now. But interesting.
Yep.
It could be that Data Lake is also cheaper than CDS storage, so that might be another incentive for
Positive.
moving that. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, and then also, which, it uses USQL, so very similar to T-SQL, being able to go in and query that data. You don't have to learn anything else to
Oh,
query that
okay,
data. And
cool.
I'm assuming that it also, we did check this just a little bit. I haven't connected it with Power BI, but I'm planning on signing up for
Yeah,
a free data lake account because I'm assuming you can connect with Power BI on that too.
right, right,
And
and
I
that
don't know what the difference between data lake and CDS would be. Do you?
I have a vague understanding. My impression is that CDS is more structured and data lake is potentially less structured, and that my
That makes
the
sense.
the context I've seen or heard of data lake being used is for massive data sets. So let's say you want to have weather, historical detailed weather information for the United States for the last 20 years, and you want to correlate that using machine learning to see how the month of November weather in Chicago is going to affect your retail sales. Really big data sets like that. That's where I think of data lake. And in data lake, my
Got it.
understanding is they have pre-built data lakes like weather data or demographic data that you can
Mm,
just pull right into your Azure data lake. They're predefined data sets you can use. You don't necessarily have to use your own or populate it yourself. That's what I think of, but I've never actually used it directly. So that would be an
mm.
interesting question, but interesting finding in the document. So cool.
Yeah, and the other thing I read through too on that is if you think about it, if we have those people who came from GP and then they have another company that came from Sage or wherever it came from, like
Right.
you said, it's unstructured. You can import data with a CSV file, a text file, or whatever. So you could put all your data in one place and
Hmm.
not have to worry about, having to put it all
That is
into BC,
interesting.
which makes it
That is
awesome.
interesting. Have
Hmm.
you worked with other customers that have had that scenario? Multiple systems or
Absolutely. We just,
got it.
yep. Well, there's a lot of acquisitions going on right now,
Right.
I feel like.
Yep.
And so they're acquiring, and all of them, one of them has QuickBooks, one of them has GP, one of them has Sage. So you're having to bring all that data together.
That
And
makes
so,
sense.
hmm,
Interesting. Okay, cool. So
yeah.
data lake. Maybe
So
it's the new thing.
data lake.
Cool.
Well, we'll
Okay,
find
next
out.
up, we have high risk changes and I'm covering up the screen. So let me remove us from that temporarily. One moment. Uh, Geez, getting too fancy here. Okay, there we go. I think we're gone.
You don't have
Okay.
that on your Stream Deck? You don't have that button on
Oh,
the Stream Deck yet?
no, this is an on the fly impromptu feature. So we are looking at
Well,
high
nice job.
risk changes, field monitoring assisted setup. What is this all about?
So this appears to me, and I tried to go in to see if I had the any kind of preview, but and it said September, I believe. So, but I didn't have it in my environment. But this appears to be that if you have a field, maybe credit limits on a customer, I know you can do that workflow for that, but pretty much your fields inside of Business Central, and you want to know if somebody makes a change on it. It's not necessarily a workflow where it has to be approved, but you are want to be notified when a change is made to that field. And so you can go in and put the field in and then enable it. And I'm assuming there's a setup there to say who should be notified when that field is changed. And so it'll notify you if it's changed. So when that person says, I didn't do it, I'm sure you'll be able
Right.
to go in and see who, what, where, and when.
Now,
So I thought that was a pretty cool one.
in this screenshot, we see a bunch of tables, company, bank, customer,
Mm-hmm.
and the field caption is IBAN. And I'd have to look that up to see what
Mm-hmm.
that means. That sounds like a banking thing, IBAN field. So,
International banking, yeah. Mm-hmm.
okay. And so I am wondering, like, what are some real world use cases that we could potentially think of for, we predominantly work with US customers, right? So Um, I don't know. I guess you could have payment terms changes. Maybe someone messes that up. Contract information, maybe. Um,
Check name on a vendor, a GP. I mean, that's the way that was a really big one because, people would change the check name
for
and,
fraud control
the check name
purposes.
would, yep, exactly.
Okay,
So you
got it.
remember we had activity tracking in GP or audit trails
Yep,
in GP. I
right.
kind of I kind of equate this to the audit trails.
Got it.
Yeah.
But now, did audit trails do proactive notification like this? I never used it. Or
Audit
was it more just
trails
a log?
would log. It was a log of what was changed on something. Yeah, I don't
Got
know if
it.
they ever had notifications on it. Probably some of the third parties did, I would bet.
Got it. So this looks a little more interesting in that it appears to proactively notify you upon changes of these, and it would be interesting to see what the notification looks like. The one thing that comes to mind, and I've never had this experience, but for instance, hospitals. If you have a celebrity who has to visit the hospital, frequently media are asking employees for access, right? And so those hospital medical information systems, they can have VIP, whatever name you want to call it, but let's say they have a VIP patient flag, and those become protected records, and they become highly detailed login user access, so they know if anyone has had unauthorized view of those records in a hospital.
You've never
So
had that problem, Steve? Nobody's looking at your
yeah,
hospital
I
records?
mean, certainly, thankfully, no one has cared about my records, but I know that happens regularly in that industry. And I
Oh,
worked for a medical laboratory and clinic years ago, and that was one concern was, people were getting these tests, and we had access to those records. And if someone were to view those records who shouldn't have been, we needed to have a log of who pulled up those records. So that's what
interesting.
this reminds me of. But in this case, it's not a view, apparently. It looks like it is a change, is my guess.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I would say it allows you to change it, and then it's going to notify someone, whoever's
right,
associated with that, that it has been changed. I would
right.
possibly bet there could be a log, but I mean, we don't know yet.
Yeah, I mean, it
It'll
would
be a
make
feature
sense
we'll
that,
have to look at.
yeah, these notifications are would have logging behind the scenes. So yeah, field change entries I see in the menu bar there. So interesting. Okay, cool. What is next
Yeah.
here? Mobile phone and email added to entry and reports. Why are you so excited about this?
Steve's like, okay, Tanya, this is not a great feature. And so I was like, okay, it's so funny. You look in GP and the phone number is 123, right? It's been around for a lot. It's been around probably before mobile phones existed, I'm
Yep.
guessing. So, it just kind of be a little more dynamic so that if I'm looking, I'm putting in a sales order or sales invoice and I see the contact right there and I can see the email address. And so maybe if this situation where I email out my invoices, I can kind of easily see possibly who that email is going to be going to right there. And you can also, when you print it out or email it, you can, edit that. But
Well,
that's why I was just
coming
like, oh, that's kind of cool.
coming from the GP world, I think we fully appreciate the visibility of this email field, right? Because in GP,
Right.
it's buried in the INET info or whatever window that was, and there's a couple email fields, and you can't tell
Exactly.
which one is right. It drove me nuts, and that's in a separate table, and it's like just email was tacked on, sometime in the 80s or whenever it was added to GP, and
Right.
not a fun field to work with. So I'm joking. I fully appreciate this.
I know.
And mobile phone these
Yeah.
days, many people only have mobile phones. And so to be able to differentiate that in a
Yep.
separate field makes total sense. So yeah, I was just joking, but it is nice to have that housekeeping, even though
I
it's
know.
not exciting.
Right. It's not a huge feature, but it can also show up on reports and things like that. And trying to get that field onto a
Yep.
report in GP was a pain.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
yeah,
Separate
it's kind of a cool
table.
little feature.
Now, in GP, was the INET info
hmm
tied to the customer address record or was it the customer master record?
It
I don't,
was. It
it
was
was,
tied to the customer address record.
got it. Got it. So that was, it
Yep.
was a customer, a child record called customer address
hmm
ID, and that had the email or INET info associated with it. So this particular implementation we're seeing here, that is at the customer, the main parent customer record.
It's actually, it's probably on the I didn't even see. It should be on the customer, but there's also contacts that are associated with customers inside of
Got it.
Business Central. So a little bit different than GP.
So
Yeah,
this
I
could
didn't, I mean,
potentially be
obviously, because I
coming
can't
from
see it. The
this
contact.
potential. Yeah, okay. So it could be coming from the contact. We'll have to see when it comes out where it is.
Right.
Okay,
Yes. Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
What's next? Um, contact conversion to vendor.
Thought the last one wasn't exciting.
Yes.
This one I just happened to see. It's kind of interesting. So currently inside of Business Central, you can change a prospect into a customer or a contact into a customer or a vendor. And I don't know what the bank would be good for because I haven't used that one.
Yeah.
But now you can also you can migrate it to a vendor and or employee. And I noticed on mine I could do it to a vendor already. So maybe it came out in 2 releases, not sure.
Got it.
But definitely not having to re-enter that data is kind of a big thing, as we all know.
Interesting.
So
And
I don't
so,
remember.
go ahead.
No, I was going to say, if you remember in GP, you could add or enter prospects,
Yep.
but you couldn't change a prospect into a customer in GP. So in this situation, you
Ah,
essentially can do that. Yeah.
I had
I never
forgotten
understood
about
that
that.
about GP, why you couldn't do it.
Now, when I think of a
Yeah.
contact conversion, just those words make me think of a customer contact, a prospect, and converting on the customer sales side. I wouldn't normally think of this on a vendor side.
Well, you remember the GP had the customer vendor link.
Yep.
So I actually had quite a few customers who use that. And so, it actually would create the customer as a vendor or a vendor as a customer inside a GP. So I think of it as this way because it could be my customer and they could be a
Ah,
vendor. So it'll definitely do that too. Yeah.
got it. So the contact could actually be a customer contact. It doesn't necessarily have to be a brand
hmm
new contact that was the name of a person that belonged to this vendor. It could be to set up the customer vendor relationship records.
Essentially, yes. Yep.
That makes a lot more sense.
So no,
And
I don't know. I no longer have to actually, key in, okay, now this person's become a vendor of mine. So I'm gonna transfer them to a vendor. And then I can also use the templates when I do that. So the templates
interesting.
that are inside of Business Central.
The other thing that I'm thinking of is internal controls. So on the payable side, you don't want to have just anyone being able to create vendors. So that's usually a controlled
hmm
process and maybe that's workflowed. And I'm wondering, is this a possible way of having a purchasing manager or someone else create a new contact that represents that vendor so that then that information could get workflowed over to accounts payable for the vendor review process?
Could be.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm trying.
Interesting.
I'm trying here. Okay.
We'll see. We'll see. He's jumping in the world of consulting today. We're not on the back
Hey,
end.
I'm a long time consultant. I'm just branching out, as we like to say. So
Well, who was it? Hendrik yesterday said if you're a developer, you need to know, you should really know the front end.
Right, right. And I know the fundamentals, but yes, I'm less in the functional side the last several years, and I've been selling ISV solutions as well the last 10 years. So I am losing some of the detailed knowledge on the functional side. But so this is cool. Now, for those who are watching, let me just see if I can pull up this document. Let me scoot this over to my monitor here. We pulled this information from a 434-page PDF file. In case you want
I
some
didn't
nice,
read all 400 pages.
yep. In case you
No.
want some light weekend reading, or in case you have insomnia, you can check this out. Let me just jump to the top. We have a nice container ship photo, and it is the Dynamics 365 2020 release wave 2 plan for October 2020 through March 2021. And the 474 or 430 pages, those are not all Business Central. Business Central only starts on page 270 something, under the SMB section 277. So you jump right there, and that's where you start the Business Central feature list for upcoming. And you'll notice general availability 2020. Some of them are available early, others are, let's see, September, October, and some are 2021. So you can scroll down, and they explain what those features are, what the use case is. So.
And they're pretty much broken up into kind of sections where it's whether it's like the administration or application. And I think there was maybe some developer stuff in there too. So it kind of breaks it up a little bit. If you're not an administrator, if you're just looking for the application side.
Right, right. So here we go. Yes, the administration is first. And one thing that I'm a huge fan of is data access intent, because that relates to the SQL geek in me, which is read scale out, which is a feature available in Azure SQL, which is super awesome, by the way. And so database access intent has reports point to the read-only copy of your production database in the SaaS environment. So that allows you users to run reports, and those reports will automatically query the read-only version of your database, not the read-write version of your database, and that will reduce utilization of that production database. So that's awesome. So they're starting to automatically change those reports over to have the read-only access intent. That's a good thing. We have some application features, which are some of the ones that we just discussed. And let's see, what do we have? Country, regional, power platform. Common data service, CDS virtual entities. So it looks like they're trying to bring those online.
So much.
Yes, lots and lots of stuff. So if you are into this sort of thing, there are a few hundred pages you can scan and take a look at all the features coming out with Wave 2. So with that, is there anything else we want to wrap up with?
I don't think so today.
Okay. Well, have a great weekend, Tanya, and everyone who is watching now and in the future. Have a good weekend and enjoy. And now that I've screwed up my vMix screens, I have no idea how to exit. So let me pop us off, and let me go to the last slide, and that'll be our outro slide. Okay. Goodbye, everyone.